I'm Dr. John Hinwood from Casuarina Beach, Australia. I would like to share. I'm Dr. John Hinwood from Casuarina Beach, Australia. In 1981, our first year of practice in Brisbane, Australia, we started to do a kids clinic every school holidays. And as well as having patients in our practice who never brought their kids in, bring their children in, we also ran an ad in the local newspaper. And the advertisement said, as the twig is bent, so goeth the tree, and there was a picture of a bent tree and a few words, and it said in the ad, if you believe your child may have a problem that could be related to its nervous system, then make an appointment. And there's no charge for that at this special kids clinic day. Not only do we see many of our own patients' children, a lot of people responded to the ad. And where our practice was, on our side of the highway, it was a middle class area, but the opposite side of the highway was the lowest socioeconomic area in our city. And a woman came in who was from the other side of the highway, and she brought this boy in. And this boy's name was Gary. And Gary at that time was 5. And there was just this huge commotion outside. And Gary came in and he was in a home, and she got him out of the home, and it had problems at birth and they were never resolved, and they wanted him locked up for life. And Gary came in and he just put any spare chair, he pulled it over. He tore magazines out of the magazine rack. He knocked all the water over. He just opened consulting room doors. He was totally out of it, but he wasn't a disobedient child. He was just a child who was out there in another world. He was almost an untamed, uncontrollable animal. And that's what they'd said at this institution, that's what he was. And the parents were told that they were going to maintain him in the institution and keep him locked up. Now, the mother had kept a daily diary from birth about his actions. And after examining him, he had major problems on examination, and we said in order for us to proceed, he needed to be x-rayed. Nothing happened. We didn't see the boy. Contacted the family. Family didn't have a telephone. They were so poor. Contacted the family and nothing happened. And 9 months later, on a regular practice afternoon, I go to the next patient and the science said, go to the x-ray room. I went to the x-ray room and here was Gary's mum with Gary. And we had one of our assistants in there and they were both holding Gary because Gary pulled the x-ray machine apart. And to x-ray Gary, I had to have his mother hold him and a chiropractic assistant hold him. And I had to actually physically hold his head against we call it the bucky, it's this part that holds the x-ray plate, so we could get x-rays of this boy. And this boy's upper neck was grossly out of alignment. I said to his mum, Rita, I believe that chiropractic can help Gary, but this is going to be a very slow process. There's a huge amount of damage here. And Rita said, we understand, I would have been back sooner, but we haven't been able, it's taken us this long to save the money for the x-rays. And at that time, I think it was 82, the x-rays were $60. Now, of course, we would have never charged her for the x-rays, but no, she was a proud woman and she had to pay. And I said, we're going to need to see Gary like 3 times a week, and I don't know for how long. And she said, I have total faith. When we explained, showed her the x-rays and what we believed was happening, she said, well, that fits totally because there was a major problem at his birth. And after he was born, his head was pushed off to a very bad angle and he was always, his head was there, and she said, I just knew that's what it was. But no one would ever listen to me. And she faithfully brought Gary in. And it wasn't until the 102nd visit, at 3 times a week, before we saw any change in Gary. Now, in a lot of circles may think that's grossly over-servicing somebody who couldn't change. But I knew that every time I put my hands on Gary, his neck, we call it subluxated, it had misaligned again. That the muscles and the ligaments and the tissues were so damaged. And we just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And his mother and father had such faith that things could be done. They just kept up and kept up. I said, abjectly poor people. But they persevered. And Gary started to make some change. Now, Gary's clothing, like his underwear, was grey. It wasn't white. And, you know, there were a lot of problems. They couldn't even bath Gary often because he'd go berserk with that. We just proceeded and worked with Gary and worked with Gary. And it was amazing. On Christmas Eve, 3 years later, Rita phoned. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and she said, John, we got a letter today, and we've been celebrating that Gary's going to be allowed to the special school next year. So Gary was allowed to go to the special school. And he spent 3 years at the special school. And then he was allowed to go to a special secondary school. And eventually Gary got out of there and he got a job in Woolworths as a shelf stacker. But the wonderful thing is Gary moved on, stayed doing the work he was doing. He met a female shelf stacker. And at 22 he got married and had his own children. Now Gary was doomed to a life of being virtually locked in a cell, because not only was he uncontrollable, he just created such havoc around him. But thanks to parents who had tremendous faith in their son and tremendous faith in knowing something could be found to help him, and their love and their caring and their perseverance, over 100 visits before there was any change. And not once did they say, this is too much. We need to keep going and keep going. And the miracle to me there is the miracle of people having such incredible stickability in staying with it when they have this incredible faith that something is going to change.